The first time I saw Maya Sterling after 5 years, she was standing at the far end of a glass conference room explaining why her company was worth $28 million. She had one hand on the back of a leather chair and the other resting beside a silver carafe no one had touched. Her hair was shorter than I remembered. Her suit probably cost more than the first espresso machine we ever bought. Behind her, a screen displayed 12 cafe locations, a national grocery partnership, and a sentence in clean white letters. A story of friendship, resilience, and responsible growth. Friendship. I almost laughed. Instead, I looked down at the binder in front of me and checked the page number. Page 47. Debt schedule. 3 credit facilities had been disclosed. There should have been 6. Maya had not noticed me yet. She was speaking to Northgate Consumer Partners, the private equity group considering buying a controlling stake in her company. Around the table sat 2 Northgate partners, their attorney, 3 members of Maya's board, our engagement partner, and 4 people from my audit team. My name was printed on a small white card. Ethan Cole, Forensic Advisory Senior Manager. 5 years earlier, Maya had changed the locks on the business we built together and left me personally responsible for $612,000 in loans. Now her lawyer was asking my firm to confirm that her numbers were clean. Maya turned toward our side of the table. Her eyes moved past the junior analysts first. Then they landed on me. The color left her face so quickly that even the Northgate attorney noticed. For 1 second, neither of us moved. I remembered flour on her cheek when we were 24. I remembered sleeping on coffee sacks in our first storeroom because the pipes had frozen. I remembered her standing beside me at my father's funeral, holding my elbow when my knees stopped working. I remembered the last message she ever sent me before taking the company. You'll understand when you calm down. She had believed 5 years would make me smaller. Instead, 5 years had taught me how to read what people hide. Maya recovered first. Ethan, she said, I wasn't told you were on this engagement. Our engagement partner, Margaret Shaw, answered before I could. Mr. Cole disclosed his prior relationship with you and the predecessor business on the day the target was identified. Our independence team reviewed it. He has no current ownership interest, no litigation pending, and no compensation tied to the transaction. I remain the signing partner. Ethan is leading the forensic work under enhanced review. Maya's lawyer leaned toward her. You could have declined, she said. I offered to, I replied. Margaret had asked me to stay because I knew the operating model, supplier economics, and location-level cash patterns better than anyone on our team. Northgate had agreed only after adding independent reviewers to every work stream I touched. But once I was there, I would not lie to make Maya comfortable. The Northgate lead investor, Colin Mercer, folded his hands. Is there a problem we should understand? Maya smiled again. Ancient history. Then it should not affect the records. For 20 years, I had known every version of Maya's face. The face she used when she had already made a decision for both of us and planned to call it necessary. My name is Ethan Cole. I was 42 years old when the woman I once trusted more than anyone learned that an audit is not an argument. An argument depends on who speaks better. An audit depends on what remains after everyone stops speaking. Maya and I met when we were 12. Her mother had moved them into the apartment above my family's hardware store after a divorce that left them with 2 suitcases and a dining table too wide for the stairwell. My father helped cut the table legs off, carried it upstairs, and reattached them in the kitchen. Maya watched the whole thing. When he finished, she asked him how much she owed. My father said, You're 12. She said that isn't an amount. That was Maya. We became friends because we were both children who preferred useful tasks to difficult feelings. I stocked screws and swept the hardware store. Maya made handwritten price signs and convinced customers to buy paintbrushes they had forgotten. At 16, we worked closing shifts at a diner near the highway. I washed dishes. She served coffee and remembered every truck driver's order by the second week. At 19, we attended different colleges in the same city and still met every Thursday at a 24-hour cafe called The Lantern. The coffee was terrible. The booths were torn. The owner knew we were broke and let us share one plate of fries for 3 hours. Maya wanted to build something people photographed. I wanted to build something people returned to. At the time, those sounded like the same dream. After college, I worked as an inventory analyst for a regional food distributor. Maya went into hospitality marketing. We were both good at our jobs and bored by them. The idea for Harbor and Pine began with a burned pot of coffee at my father's wake. People had brought casseroles, cookies, and paper cups. My father had died after a short illness that somehow lasted forever. I stood in the hardware store break room staring at a coffee machine that had been left on too long. Maya poured the coffee down the sink. "We can do better than this," she said. 6 months later, we signed a lease on an abandoned laundromat near the river. The windows were cracked. The floor sloped toward 3 rusted drains. The landlord gave us 4 months free because no reasonable person wanted the building. We called it Harbor and Pine Coffee. Harbor for the part of the city that had carried both our families through bad years. Pine. Because my father used to say the smell of cut pine meant something was being made. Maya handled the brand, the room, the press, and the way people felt when they entered. I handled everything that had to work after they sat down. We each invested $38,000. Mine came from my father's life insurance and a loan against the hardware store building my mother still owned. Maya's came from savings 2 credit cards and a loan from her mother. We signed every major document together. The first year was almost beautiful from a distance. I woke at 3:45 every morning to meet the bakery delivery because the driver refused to carry trays past the curb. Maya arrived at 6, turned on the music-lit candles she insisted made the concrete walls feel warmer, and opened the doors. Then we counted cash, scrubbed the milk fridge, answered emails, and argued about whether we could afford another barista. There were weeks when neither of us took a paycheck. There were months when one broken compressor could have ended us. Maya became the public face because she was better at it. She could stand in a room full of strangers and make them feel they had discovered the place before everyone else. I liked standing in the doorway and watching a line reach the sidewalk. I liked hearing cups knock against saucers. I liked that our first regular customer, a retired teacher named Mrs. Alvarez, brought us a framed dollar bill and said every business needed one piece of money it was not allowed to spend. Maya hung it beside the register. We opened a second location in year 4. By year 7, Harbor and Pine had 6 cafes, a small roasting facility, 93 employees, and enough debt to make every success feel temporary. Maya wanted to expand faster. She wanted airport locations, retail packaging, and investor money. I wanted store managers who could take sick days without the entire schedule collapsing. We began using the word vision as a weapon. I said she used it to avoid arithmetic. She was godmother to my daughter Lily. When her marriage ended 2 years later, she slept in our guest room for 6 weeks and cried only once at 2 in the morning because the dog had taken her husband's side. People later asked how I missed what she was planning. It makes ordinary explanations feel sufficient. Maya said our existing attorney was too small for the next stage of growth. She hired Grant Weller, a corporate lawyer who wore pale ties and used the phrase clean structure whenever he wanted something moved where I could not see it. The second warning was a company named Juniper Hospitality Group. Maya said it was a holding company for future brand experiments. She said investors preferred flexibility. She said she was still having conversations. The third warning was a stack of signature pages. We were refinancing 3 locations and replacing short-term equipment loans with a larger small business administration facility. Grant sent documents late on a Friday and said the lender needed them before Monday. Maya called while I was driving Lily to urgent care for a broken wrist. It's the same structure we discussed, she said. Just cleaner. I haven't read it. Ethan, if we miss the window, payroll gets tight. We had opened 2 locations too close together. One was underperforming. Payroll was tight. I signed electronically from a plastic chair under a television playing cartoons without sound. That signature became the door Maya used, because it gave her enough confusion to move quickly. Over the next 4 months, vendor contracts shifted from Harbor and Pine Coffee LLC to Juniper Hospitality. The website changed its privacy policy. Several store managers received new offer letters. Maya called it administrative consolidation. I asked our bookkeeper Dana for a full intercompany schedule. Her email said she needed to focus on family. I called Maya. At 10:15, I drove to the roasting facility. Through the glass, I could see employees gathered near the training bar. Maya stood in front of them. Grant Weller stood beside her. Someone had removed my name from the wall where our framed first dollar still hung. Maya came outside. "Oh, what is this?" I asked. "We need to talk somewhere private. Open the door." "Ethan, open the door." Employees were watching through the glass. Maya stepped outside and let the door close behind her. "Harbor and Pine cannot continue under the current structure," she said. "What current structure? Deadlocked ownership, founder dependence, unmanageable guarantees. You mean our company? I mean a company that is going to fail if we keep pretending hard work is a strategy." I looked through the glass at the people we had hired. Tessa, who had started as a barista at 19 and now managed 3 stores. Ben, whose twins I had visited in the hospital. "What did you tell them?" "The truth." "Which truth?" "That Juniper acquired the operating assets and offered continued employment. You moved the company, I moved the viable parts. With whose approval? Under the restructuring authority in the refinance documents. I never approved an asset sale. You approved the facility. That is not the same thing." Grant disagrees. Grant remained inside. I asked, "What did Juniper pay?" Maya looked at the folder. "Assumed obligations." "Which obligations?" "Payroll, supplier balances, lease arrears, the things keeping everyone employed. And the bank debt? Some guarantees remain with Harbor and Pine." "How much?" "Ethan, we had no choice." "How much?" Grant came outside. "Mr. Cole, any communication should go through counsel. This is my building. The premises are leased to Juniper Hospitality as of this morning. My equipment is inside. Asset ownership is disputed. My employees are inside. They accepted offers." I looked at Maya. "You planned this." For one stupid second, those tears almost reached me. "I saved what we built," she said. "No, you saved the part with your name on it." "This is not about names." "Then put mine back on the wall." But I knew my friend had already rehearsed living without me. Grant handed me a letter. Harbor and Pine Coffee LLC had defaulted under the new lending structure. The operating assets had been transferred to Juniper Hospitality under a secured party agreement and board consent I had supposedly granted through the refinance package. Juniper would continue the cafes under a new name, Morrow House Coffee. Maya had registered the trademark 9 months earlier. While she slept in our guest room after her divorce, she had already filed the name. While she ate dinner with Lily and asked if she could still be called Aunt Maya, she had already begun building the door she planned to close on me. I remember sitting in my car outside my own house. My wife Rachel came onto the porch wearing socks and no shoes. I said she took it. Rachel did not ask what. The next year reduced my life to envelopes, tax notices. Maya's new company kept the stores, customers' equipment, social media accounts, recipes, and most employees. Harbor and Pine kept the debt. I kept Harbor and Pine. The business I owned became the container for everything she did not want. We challenged the asset transfer, the board consent, and the valuation. Maya's side produced signed documents. Grant argued that I had approved broad restructuring authority and later regretted the outcome. I argued that authority was not consent to strip the company. Litigation would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. My mother's hardware building was tied to one guarantee. I signed away claims to the operating brand in exchange for partial release from certain liabilities. That word followed me for 3 years. Rachel and I moved with Lily into a rental near the highway where trucks shook the windows before dawn. My mother sold the hardware building. I took a job processing invoices for a consulting firm because it offered health insurance and did not require anyone to trust my entrepreneurial judgment. Debt covenants? I had spent years understanding how money moved through a business. Now I learned how people made it look as if money had moved somewhere else. Rachel once found me asleep at the kitchen table with my face on a forensic accounting textbook. She closed the book and said, "You do not have to turn what she did into your whole life." I know, because I could not survive another room where everyone else understood the paperwork better than I did. I moved from invoice testing to internal controls. From investigations to transaction advisory. I learned that fraud rarely begins with a suitcase of cash. By the 5th year, I was a senior manager in forensic advisory. Lily was 15 and no longer remembered exactly how Harbor and Pine smelled in the morning, which hurt more than I expected. Rachel and I were still married. Maya, meanwhile, became a story people shared. Morrow House Coffee grew from 6 cafes to 12. Business magazines called her the founder. A regional television segment showed her walking through the original laundromat location and saying she had built the company after a difficult period in her personal life. No mention of Harbor and Pine. Maya gave talks about resilience. She said leadership sometimes meant making painful decisions before others understood them. Each time a clip appeared online, someone sent it to me. Then Margaret Shaw called me into her office on a Tuesday morning. Northgate Consumer Partners was considering a $28 million controlling investment in Morrow House Hospitality. They wanted a quality of earnings review, debt verification, working capital analysis, and targeted forensic procedures because one lender had raised questions about intercompany balances. Margaret said I saw the predecessor name in the background documents. You can decline. Yes. You probably should. Yes. I asked who is doing the work if I decline. David or Monique. They're good. They are. I looked through the glass wall at analysts carrying laptops between conference rooms. I had spent 5 years rebuilding a life where Maya was not allowed to decide who I was. Now her name was on Margaret's desk. I need to disclose everything I said. You do. I will not touch conclusions without independent review. You won't. If there is any concern from Northgate, I step out. Agreed. And if Maya objects, Margaret's expression did not change. The client is Northgate. We completed the independence review. I submitted the old settlement loan documents and litigation history. Northgate's counsel reviewed them. Maya's company was informed that a senior member of the team had prior involvement with the predecessor entity. They were not given my name until the kickoff schedule circulated. Maya objected within 11 minutes. Northgate kept me. Because the first documents already contained inconsistencies. Morrow House reported adjusted earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization of $4.6 million. That did not automatically mean fraud. Prepaid cards, seasonal inventory tenant allowances, equipment leases, spoilage tips, delivery fees, loyalty points, and store openings can make ordinary numbers look suspicious. The first problem was bank completeness. The debt schedule listed a term loan, a revolving line, and equipment financing, but interest expense suggested more borrowing. My analyst Priya Nolan found recurring withdrawals to 2 companies described as revenue partners. They were merchant cash advance lenders. Morrow House had borrowed against future card sales. Those obligations were not on the disclosed debt schedule because management classified them as sales participation agreements. They had fixed remittance amounts, default penalties, personal guarantees, and security interests in receivables. Debt. Expensive debt. The second problem was the Small Business Administration loan. A balance confirmation showed $1.4 million outstanding under a property improvement entity called MH River North, LLC. Maya's chief financial officer, Nolan Pierce, said it was non-recourse project financing tied to a landlord. The loan file listed Morrow House Hospitality as co-borrower. Another missing debt. The third problem was same-store sales. Management reported 11% growth. Raw point-of-sale data showed closer to 4%. The difference came from large end-of-month gift card sales to corporate buyers. Cash had arrived, but Morrow House recognized most of it as revenue immediately instead of recording a liability for future drinks and food. One customer purchased $310,000 in cards over 6 months. The customer's address matched a consulting company owned by Maya's college roommate. I asked for the underlying contracts. The consulting company had been paid $327,000 for brand expansion strategy. It bought $310,000 in gift cards, nearly the same amount out and back in. The fourth problem was store opening costs. Payroll for training employees' launch events and temporary staff had been capitalized as leasehold improvements. That moved expenses off the income statement and made profits appear higher. The fifth problem was inventory. The roasting facility reported green coffee inventory that would have required more floor space than the warehouse possessed. Maya's team asked to postpone because of a safety inspection. Northgate refused. At 7 the next morning, we stood inside the warehouse. The air smelled like burlap and roasted sugar. For a moment, memory hit me so hard I had to stop walking. Luis used to teach me how to listen for first crack during roasting. Maya used to complain the smell stayed in her hair. Now, rows of bags were arranged beneath white labels reading Morrow House Origin Program. Our count found 41% less inventory than the ledger. Several stacks were empty pallets covered by tarps and staged with bags only around the edges. He said Nolan had instructed the team to prepare the floor for investor photographs 2 weeks earlier. Maya tried to have me removed after that. She requested a private call with Margaret and Northgate's counsel. She said my personal history was contaminating the process. She claimed employees felt interrogated. She said I was using the engagement to relitigate a failed partnership. Margaret listened. Then she asked Maya whether any of our findings were factually incorrect. Maya said the issues were being taken out of context. Northgate's counsel asked for the context in writing. Instead, documents began disappearing. A shared folder containing weekly cash forecasts was replaced by a cleaner version. An accounts payable export was uploaded, removed, and re-uploaded with 12 vendors excluded. At 11:42 p.m. one Thursday, someone attempted to revoke our access to the virtual data room. Northgate restored it within 20 minutes. The next morning, a woman named Elena Park asked to speak with me. Elena was Morrow House's controller. She had worked there 18 months. She was 36, wore round glasses, and spoke so quietly that I leaned forward to hear her. She asked whether whistleblowers were protected under the engagement. I told her I could explain our process, but could not promise legal protection. Margaret joined us. We advised Elena to seek independent counsel before providing anything outside company channels. Then she placed a notebook on the table. I already gave these concerns to the audit committee, she said. 3 times. What happened? The first time Nolan told me I did not understand transaction accounting. The second time, Grant Weller said the board preferred issues to be solved internally. The third time, Maya asked whether I was committed to the future of the company. Grant Weller, the same lawyer who had stood behind the glass door 5 years earlier. I asked what concerns. Elena opened the notebook. She had written dates, journal entry numbers, and document names. She pointed to an entry posted at 11:58 p.m. on the last day of the fiscal year. The supporting invoice came from Weller Strategic Services, a consulting affiliate connected to Grant's law firm. The description was transaction readiness and organizational restructuring. The entry increased assets and reduced current expenses. Another entry moved $620,000 of store-level payroll into proprietary training platform development. Another moved delinquent sales taxes into a long-term intercompany receivable. The receivable was due from Juniper Hospitality Group. Juniper, the company Maya had used to take Harbor and Pine. I had assumed Juniper disappeared after Morrow House consolidated. Juniper owned trademarks, charged management fees to the cafés, and carried liabilities the main company did not include in its transaction package. Elena said, "There are 2 ledgers, not literally 2 accounting systems. One management reporting package for lenders and the board. One consolidation model used internally to understand cash. Who has access? Maya, Nolan, and Grant. I built portions of it. Where is it?" She looked at Margaret. in a restricted SharePoint folder called Winter Menu. Northgate issued a preservation notice. Morrow House's board formed a special committee. Grant objected and claimed attorney-client privilege over the restricted folder. Northgate's attorney replied that business records did not become privileged merely because a lawyer stored them. Maya called me directly on my personal phone. I had not heard her voice without a conference room around it in 5 years. Ethan. Rachel was rinsing dishes. She looked at me and turned off the water. I said, "You should speak through counsel. Please. What do you want?" You know what Northgate will do if they misunderstand these numbers. They are asking for explanations. You know cafés. You know timing. You know how ugly working capital can look during expansion. Yes. So tell them. Tell them what? That the company is real. I never said it wasn't. That the debt is manageable. I do not know that. You know me. I looked at Rachel. She was watching my face, not the phone. I knew you, I said. Then Maya said, "You think this is justice? Number. You think you finally get to stand in a room and make me feel what you felt? Number. Don't lie to me. I wanted that once I said. I wanted you to lose every chair, every cup, every customer. I wanted people to stop clapping when you spoke. I wanted your mother to look at you the way mine looked at me when she sold the hardware store." Rachel's eyes filled. "But wanting it is not the same as doing it. You are doing it now." "No, Maya. I am checking whether the numbers you gave a buyer are true. They are directionally true. Debt is not directional. You always did this." "Did what? Made numbers more important than survival," I said. "You left me the numbers because you thought they were less important than the brand." "You could help me fix this," she said. 5 years ago, you said you saved what we built." "I did." "Then why does it need me to lie now?" The restricted files arrived the following afternoon. The internal cash model showed a business much closer to collapse than the board had been told. Morrow House had missed debt covenants for 3 consecutive quarters. Nolan had obtained waivers by sending lenders adjusted calculations that excluded merchant advances and reclassified overdue taxes. The company owed $840,000 in unpaid sales and payroll taxes across 4 jurisdictions. 2 expansion landlords had issued default notices. A distribution partner had the right to return nearly $900,000 of packaged coffee because product sell-through guarantees had not been met. No, the grocery partnership displayed in Maya's investor deck was not a national rollout. It was a regional test with return rights. The $28 million valuation assumed it was permanent. The worst item was an email thread between Maya Nolan and Grant. Nolan wrote, "Without Northgate cash, we are inside 90 days. Grant replied, "Then the transaction narrative must remain focused on growth friction, not liquidity distress." Maya wrote, "Do not put 90 days in anything the board sees." Another thread discussed the merchant advances. Maya asked whether they had to be included as debt. Grant wrote, "Not if characterized as receivables participation and repaid before closing." A third thread contained a spreadsheet titled Legacy Cleanup. Potential founder claim resolved. Next to it, in Grant's notes, "No ongoing exposure unless transaction diligence reopens predecessor asset chain." That line connected the past to the present. Juniper had acquired Harbor and Pine's assets by assuming certain obligations. But Juniper never paid full consideration recorded in the old transfer documents. Instead, it issued an intercompany note to Harbor and Pine. That note had later been marked satisfied through offsets that did not exist. If the note remained unpaid, my old bankruptcy estate and creditors might still have a claim. I stepped away from that work stream immediately. Margaret assigned it to independent counsel and another forensic director. I did not want anyone to say I shaped the result for myself. What they found was worse than I expected. Juniper had used Harbor and Pine's equipment loyalty data vendor arrangements and lease deposits to launch Morrow House. The internal note meant to compensate Harbor, and Pine had been eliminated without payment through a journal entry approved by Nolan and Grant. If recognized properly, Morrow House owed that money to the old entity or its creditors. That liability was also absent from the deal materials. Northgate scheduled the final findings meeting for Monday. Maya arrived with Grant and a litigation attorney I had never met. Nolan joined by video. The room was larger than the first one. Margaret led. She explained scope independence limitations and review procedures. Then our revenue team presented the gift card issue. Our debt team presented merchant advances, the SBA loan, and covenant breaches. Our tax specialist presented unpaid obligations. Our operations team presented inventory shortages. The independent forensic director presented the Juniper note and predecessor asset chain issue. Each finding removed one place Maya could stand. Grant interrupted often. Northgate's attorney asked whether the seller disclosure schedule would be updated. Grant said negotiations were ongoing. Colin Mercer said that was not my question. Finally, Margaret turned to me. I presented the adjusted earnings bridge. Morrow House had reported $4.6 million. After reversing gift card recognition, capitalized payroll, unsupported inventory, related party round trips, and unearned grocery revenue. Sustainable earnings were between $1.3 and $1.7 million before unresolved tax and debt costs. The company was not worth $28 million under Northgate's model. It might not have positive equity value at all once all obligations were included. Maya looked directly at me. Are you finished? Margaret said, Maya. I asked Ethan. Yes. You always wanted the business to stay small. This is not about size. You resented every opportunity I created. This is not about opportunity. You could not stand that people saw me as the founder. I said you were a founder. You were, I continued. You built half of Harbor and Pine. You made rooms people wanted to enter. You hired good people. You saw possibilities I did not. Maya's eyes filled. Then say what this really is. I am. No. Say you hate me. Grant touched her arm. I thought of all the nights I had rehearsed a speech. 5 years of telling her exactly what she had done. When the moment came, the speech felt too small. I hated what you did, I said. For a long time, I let that become the same thing, but this report would say the same thing if I had never met you. Colin Mercer closed his folder. Northgate is terminating the transaction. Maya turned toward him. We can cure these issues. We were presented with incomplete debt, overstated earnings, undisclosed tax exposure, related party transactions, and records indicating management withheld liquidity information from the board. You are walking away from 12 profitable locations. We are walking away from representations we cannot rely on, Grant said. Any suggestion of intentional misconduct is premature. Northgate's attorney replied, Then you should welcome the investigation. One lender declared a reservation of rights. The special committee placed Maya and Nolan on administrative leave. Grant was removed as company counsel pending review of conflicts. Modern businesses rarely collapse in one dramatic sound. Maya remained seated after everyone else stood. She said, Did you know this would happen when you took the engagement? Number. Did you hope it would? No, I said. I hoped the books would prove you were right. You expect me to believe that? I needed to. For the first time in 5 years, she did not look polished. I could not go back to nothing she said. Oh, you did not have to. You would have slowed us until the debt killed us. Maybe. You admit it. I admit I could have been wrong. I said, You never gave me the chance to be wrong with you. That was the sentence that finally broke her. Not the debt. Her face folded and she covered it with one hand. The next 6 months were less satisfying than revenge stories pretend. Morrow House did not disappear overnight. The special committee hired restructuring advisors. The merchant advance lenders swept card receipts. Tax authorities filed liens. The SBA lender began enforcement against the property entity. Morrow House sold 4 profitable locations to a competitor. The original laundromat Café was included. Tessa called me after her location closed. She had stayed with Maya after the takeover. I should have called you, she said. You had a mortgage. That is not an excuse. It is a reason. I hated that Maya's choices had become weight other people carried. Nolan resigned before the investigation ended. His license was referred to the state board. Grant faced a professional conduct complaint and civil claims over conflicts and transaction representations. Maya was removed as chief executive. The board's final report found that she had directed incomplete disclosures, approved aggressive accounting entries, concealed liquidity warnings, and allowed related party transactions without proper review. It called the controls ineffective and the governance dominated. Those words destroyed her reputation more thoroughly than insults could. The old Juniper note was reinstated as a valid liability after independent counsel reviewed the records. Funds recovered through the liquidation went first to secured creditors, tax authorities, and employees. A smaller amount reached Harbor and Pine's old creditor trust. My mother received part of what she had lost on the hardware building, enough to replace her roof and stop pretending she enjoyed living with buckets in the hallway when it rained. It did not surprise Rachel. "You already got what you needed," she said. "What was that?" "To know the room was not smarter than you." Maya pleaded no contest to state charges related to false transaction records and received probation restitution obligations and a ban from serving as an officer of certain regulated entities for several years. Her punishment was smaller and longer. Every speech about resilience disappeared from conference websites. The business profile calling her an inspiring founder was quietly removed. For months, I expected to feel relief each time something happened. Then one Saturday, Lily asked if we could visit the old cafe. The location had closed and was waiting for a new tenant. Brown paper covered the windows. The Harbor and Pine sign was long gone. So was Morrow House. "I remember the bell," Lily said. "What bell?" "The one on the door." It had been a brass bell Maya found at a flea market. Customers complained it was too loud. Maya refused to remove it. Lily said Aunt Maya used to let me ring it after closing. Children do not organize memory by who was right. The room was empty except for stacked chairs and a stain where the espresso machine had stood. "I am sorry," Lily said. "For what?" "That she did that to you. You were a child." "I know." She put her hands in her coat pockets. "Do you miss her?" "Yes." Lily nodded as if that made sense. Missing someone is not acquitting them. A month later, Maya wrote me a letter. She said she was living with her mother and working through the restitution plan. She said therapy had taught her that she treated fear like permission. She wrote that the night she locked me out, she believed I would eventually understand because I had always been the person who understood her. "I used your love as evidence that you would survive me." She asked whether she could return one thing. Rachel knew. Margaret knew. 5 years earlier, I would have laughed at needing witnesses to meet my best friend. Maya arrived carrying a flat cardboard box. She looked smaller without the architecture of a company around her. Inside the box was the framed first dollar from Harbor and Pine. The one piece of money we were never allowed to spend. "I kept it," Maya said. "Why?" "I told myself it belonged to the company." "It did." "No." She looked at me. "It belonged to the beginning." On the back, in faded marker, we had both signed our names. Ethan Cole, Maya Sterling, founders. She said, "I am sorry," because the sentence had been delayed for 5 years and deserved room. "I am sorry I took the company," she said. "I am sorry I left you the debt. I am sorry I used documents you did not understand because I knew you would sign if I said payroll was at risk. I am sorry I let people call me the founder while I trained myself to believe you were only operations. You were the reason it worked." I said, "We were." She asked, "Can you forgive me?" "Not today." "Okay." It was the first time Maya accepted a boundary without trying to rename it. I mounted the first dollar in my office. I tell them it came from the first company I ever audited badly. Harbor and Pine failed because Maya committed a betrayal. It also failed because I believed friendship could replace controls. I let one person control brand, legal relationships, and future strategy because asking harder questions felt disloyal. I confused trust with the absence of verification. 3 years after the Northgate deal collapsed, I became a partner in forensic advisory. I do not choose cases because I recognize the villain. I choose them because someone needs the numbers translated before another person loses a house, a business, or the right to describe what happened. Maya eventually found work managing operations for a non-profit food cooperative. No founder title. Once a year, on the anniversary of the first cafe opening, she sends a photograph of a cup of coffee. Rachel says this is either healing or the strangest form of emotional bookkeeping she has ever seen. People ask whether I destroyed Maya's company. The company was already burning cash-hiding debt and selling a version of itself that did not exist. I opened the ledger and turned on the lights. That is the part people misunderstand about revenge. They imagine power as the moment someone finally gets to strike back. Sometimes power is refusing to strike. Sometimes it is documenting the missing account, confirming the loan, asking why money left one company and returned through another. Reading the document someone hopes you will sign from a hospital chair. The strongest revenge I ever received was not seeing Maya lose the deal. It was sitting in that conference room and realizing I no longer needed her to admit I had built something. And when Maya finally looked across the table and understood who I had become, I did not feel like the man she locked outside. I felt like the man who had found the door. She took the name, the customers, the employees, and the story. She left me the debt because she believed debt was the part nobody applauded. 5 years later, debt was the first thing I asked to see.